The next point, we should ensure whatever we see is clear.
That means work is being done, we can see that it is in opposite direction.
Hello learners, you are welcome to yet another e-learning class on economics. My name is Obi Ifeanyi, and I'm going to take you as usual in economics. Today, while on my way to the class today, my wife gave me a call. She said she couldn't buy enough crayfish from the market. I said, why? What's happening? She said that the supply was inadequate, that suppliers are not supplying. I said, why are the suppliers not supplying? She said she doesn't know, but all she knows is that suppliers are not supplying, that there were not enough crayfish in the market. So that leads us to our topic for today, which is supply. What is supply? Let us first look at our outline for today. We have definition of supply, supply schedule, change in quantity supply, change in supply, increase and decrease in supply. Now, let us move on to supply. What is supply? To a layman, you say supply is the act of bringing in something, or bringing something and selling to somebody. No, it's not just that. Supply in economics is defined as the quantity of a commodity which the producer is willing and able to make available for sale at a particular price and at a particular period of time. Why are we talking about willing and able? You may be willing to supply, but we are not able. Able means that you have the product, yes, but you don't have enough. You are willing, you want to supply, but the products are not there. So just like we said in demand, that demand is the quantity of a commodity which the consumers are willing and able to buy. So you must be willing and able. So when we are talking about supply, I repeat, I said that supply is defined as the quantity of a commodity which the producers are willing and able to make available for sale at a particular price and at a particular time or given period of time. Supply schedule. What is supply schedule? Supply schedule shows various quantities of a commodity which the producer is willing and able to make available at various prices. Various quantities of a commodity. We still see that in our table, but let us digress on this. Various quantities of a commodity which the producers are willing to make available at various prices. Now, you see that since the purpose of every business is to make profit, and profit is the difference between revenue and cost, producers will sell more of their products when the price rises than when it falls, because fall in price means loss of profit. For example, let us look at the table showing a supply schedule. If having a glance at this table, you now find out that the suppliers are willing and able to make available certain number of eggs for sale at certain prices. That takes us to what we mean. You know, in supply, we say that suppliers supply more at a higher price than at a lower price. When the price is very high, suppliers want to take advantage of the high price, supply more and make profit. So that is why that law of supply says that suppliers supply more at a high price, because law of supply or supply goes in the same direction, unlike demand that goes in opposite direction. In supply, the higher the price, the higher the supply, and the lower the price, the lower the supply. Meaning that suppliers supply more at a higher price than at a lower price. Now, looking at the table of supply schedule, you now find out that in the table above, when the price rises to 40 naira an egg, 240 eggs were made available. At 40 naira, the suppliers supplied the 240 eggs because of the high price. But when the price falls to 5 naira an egg, only 30 eggs were made available. Only 30 eggs, showing you that they are only willing to supply at high prices than at low prices. Now, let us look at the graphical representation of the supply schedule. Most times you are asked in your exams to make a graphical representation. Maybe they've given you that table and asked you to make a graphical representation. There is nothing that is very cheap. It's just to put your supply graph, and you apportion the prices and the quantities to them. Like as you can see, when the price was at 5 naira, only 30x were supplied. When the price increased to 10 naira, the suppliers increased their supply to 40x. As the price increased again to 20 naira, the suppliers increased their supply to 60. At 30 naira, 120x were supplied. And at 40 naira, 240x were made available. And if you go down again with it, you now see that at 40 naira, the suppliers supply 240x. The price decreased to 30 naira. The suppliers decreased their supply to 120x. The price fell further to 20 naira, and the suppliers decreased their supply to 60 naira, 60x. And when they supply, the price reduced to 10 naira, only 40x were made available, and at 5 naira, 30x. It equally shows that that suppliers supply less at lower prices. As the price decreases, the supply decreases. That's why we say that the lower the price, the lower the quantity supplied. In the graph above, the supply curve of X sloped downwards from left to right, showing that the producers supply more X for sale when the price rises than when it falls. Let us look at change in quantity supply. Change in quantity supply. What is change in quantity supply? Change in quantity supply is the movement along the same supply curve. Sometimes in your exams, especially in your objective test, they will ask you, movement along the same supply curve signifies dash. It signifies change in quantity supply. Why? Because once you hear the same or one supply curve, it means change in quantity. So because it could be upward movement, it could be downward movement. Upward movement means that the price is increasing, while downward movement means that the price is decreasing. So it could be, just look at the our graphical representation. You see the upwards and downwards movement. Upwards movement at high price, while downwards movement signifies low price. You can also look at fig 3, where you have this your price, your quantity. You have at price 2, you have Q2 was supplied. At price 1, you have Q1, and at the normal price, you have normal quantity. You see, this is a graphical. You can easily draw it like this and represent your numbers you have maybe from your table, and pass them onto the graph. In fig 3, when the price rises from P1 to P2, the quantity supplied also rises from 0Q1 to 0Q2. There is an upward movement along the supply curve. If the price moves to, or if the price falls below P1, there will be a downward movement along supply curve, unless that is 0Q would be supplied. So at downwards movement, we mean that it is decreasing, or the price is reducing, while at upward movement, we mean that the price is going up. Now, let us look at change in supply. I always tell you that change in supply is not the same thing with change in quantity supply. For a layman, the person will tell you, is it not supply? They are not supply. There is difference between quantity, change in quantity supply, and change in supply. Change in quantity supply has to do, listen attentively, change in quantity supply has to do with movement along the same supply curve. It could be upwards, it could be downwards. Only one curve. Why, when you are talking about change in supply itself, it means an entire shift of the supply curve to an entirely new curve, which means in that respect we have two curves, no longer one. And change in quantity supply is caused by changes in a price, because it's when the price goes up, the quantity supply will go up. When the price goes down, the quantity supply will go down. But when we are talking about change in supply itself, change in supply is caused by factors other than price. So there are other factors that can influence the supply to change. That is, move from the original curve to an entirely new curve. Now, let us look at change in supply. Change in supply. Change in supply, when we are talking about change in supply, we say that change in supply is a movement from the original supply curve to an entirely new curve. So a movement to an entirely new curve. That is, leaving the original curve to entirely new one. When you look at this fig 4, you see we have A, increase in supply, and we have B, decrease in supply. This is what we mean by change in supply. In A, you now find out that we are talking about increase in supply. Remember, I told you that a shift in the supply curve to the right signifies increase in a supply, while a shift of the supply curve to the left signifies decrease in a supply. Sometimes in your exam you'll be asked to, with the aid of a graph, show you understanding of increase and decrease in a demand, or explain increase and decrease in demand. Most times you don't answer those questions. Why? Because you are afraid of this graphical representation. This graphical representation is the easiest way you can answer economics questions, because it's very easy to draw and it's very easy to explain. It's just like you say 1 + 1 is what? You say 2, they give you your full mark. That is what will happen when you draw this curve. Draw your lines very well, label it very well, and put your arrow. Your arrow can be of any, you can put this on the other one, but the important thing is your explanation. You remember, once your arrow or a shift in the supply curve to your right, any shift at all to the right signifies increase. Bear that in mind. And any shift at all to the left signifies decrease. So by the time you draw your graph, you draw your supply curve, you see the supply there, SS, and you see S1, S1. Then you put your arrow. Now the arrow, in A, the arrow is going from SS to S1. That is a movement to the right. This movement to the right signifies an increase in a supply. Now you look at B. In B, you see that S1, S1, and you see your SS. You now find your arrow from SS pointing to S1, S1. That is a movement to the left, showing that there is a decrease in a supply. Because from our knowledge of supply, we know that any movement or increase and decrease in supply, any movement to the right is increase, while any movement or shift of the supply curve to the left signifies decrease in a supply. Now we look at increase and decrease in supply. Increase and decrease in supply. In fig 5, when the supply increase from SS to S1, S1, that is shift of the supply curve to the right, more is supplied. I repeat, when the supply increases from SS to S1, S1, that is shift in supply curve to the right, more is supplied at 0Q1 at a lower price. P1. When the supply increases from SS to S2, S2, a shift of the supply curve to the left, less is supplied at 0Q2 at a high or higher price. That is P2. That's the graphical representation. You look at it very well. You see your supply curve. You see S2, S2. You see SS. You see S1, S1. Then from your price angle, you now see your price 2, price, and price 1. You see, when the price increases from P to P2, you find out that 0Q2 is supplied at a higher price. You know, so the lesser is less is supplied at a higher price. But when the price fell from P to P1, you now look at it. You see that more is supplied at a lower price. That is from Q to Q1, Q1. With this, we are gradually coming to the end of this lesson. Let us have an overview of what we have learned so far. We have learned the definition of supply. We said that supply is defined as the quantity of a commodity which the producer is willing and able to produce at a given time, which the producer is willing and able to make available at a given price and at a given period of time. Let us talk more on this supply schedule. We said that supply schedule shows various quantities of a commodity which producers are willing and able to make available at various prices and at a given period of time. This supply schedule can be called individual supply schedule. That is the one we have in our table, individual supply schedule. In market supply schedule, because we have individual supply schedule and we have market supply schedule. In market supply schedule, it shows various quantities of commodity purchased by different families. You see, in market supply schedule, we are talking about now different families. In supply schedule itself, it is one family. That's why in our table you see at 5 naira, 30x we are made available, at 10 naira, 40x, at 20 naira, 60x, and so on and so on, at 30 naira, 120, and at 40 naira, 240x. That is one family. When you get to market supply schedule, that is where you have different families. Family A, maybe as we are using a table of X, family A, Obi and Mrs. Obi, family B, Abdul, family C, Bello, and family D, Aliu. These families they don't have the same financial power. That is market demand schedule. They don't have the same financial power. Maybe at 5 naira, and you now find out that as Obi is buying maybe 240x, you see that Aliu is buying 220x, you see that Bello is buying 200x, and so on and so forth. Then when the price will increase to 30, you see these different families buying according to their demand. That is what we call market demand schedule. That is the table or list showing various quantities of commodities purchased by different families. So the difference between market and individual demand schedule is that individual is of a family. That's why we say individual. It is of a family, while market is about other households. Just like this table now, you now find if we are talking about market demand schedule, as you have 30, you have other families. This is for one family. The next family may have, as the first family is buying 30, the next family is buying 40 or buying 25 or 20. Here they have 40, you will now have 30, you have 40, 45 or 50 as the case may be, and so on and so forth. Just as we said, that in the table above, when the price rises to 40 naira an egg, 240x we are made available for sale. When the price falls to 5 naira an egg, only 30x we are available for sale. That still signifies what we are saying, that the law of demand that says that more is supplied at a higher price than at a lower price. That is, the higher the price, the higher the supply, and the lower the price, the lower the quantity supply. This is the graphical representation of the table, which is also very, very important. Sometimes the table, they may just write it without even giving you a table, or sometimes from that table they will ask you to place a graphical representation of eggs supplied by the producers. You have to draw it, place. Remember, as you are drawing your graph, the lines you draw must be represented. It must be represented adequately. You have to put your S to show that it is supply that we are talking about. If you draw supply and you put a D here, you have already failed, because you are showing us supply and you are using a demand, that is D, to represent it. You have to be very careful when it comes to drawing. You have to cool down. Don't be in a rush. When you rush, you make mistakes. You cool down, use your ruler, draw your lines very well, and they represent them adequately. In the graph above, the supply curve of X slopes down upwards from left to right, showing that producers supply more X for sale when the price rises than when it falls. Change in quantity supply, as we talked about, we said that any movement along the same demand curve, whether downwards or upwards, indicates change in quantity supply. Any movement along the same supply curve, whether downwards or upwards. So let us see the graphical representation. That's the movement there. One is going up, one is going down. Movement up shows that the price is increasing, and movement downwards shows that the price is decreasing. That is, any movement in this, within the same demand, within the same supply curve, either upward or downward movement, that signifies what we know as a change in quantity supply, because quantity changes and it is caused by price. Change in quantity supply is caused by changes in price. Just as I told you the other time, change in quantity demand is also caused by changes in price. When you come to quantity, what makes quantity change is price. Why? For example, a family, you have 200 naira, or let's say 500 naira to go and buy gari. You go to the market, they say that gari is 250. How many mudu of gari will you buy? You buy 2 mudus, because you have only 500 naira to spend on the gari. But if you go to the market and they say gari is 100 naira, you have to buy how many? You buy 5 mudus, because you have made your budget of only 500 naira for the gari. So it is only the price of a commodity that makes the quantity that you buy to change. Either the price increases and you reduce your quantity, or that the price increases and you reduce your quantity. But when we are talking about supply, we say that suppliers are willing to supply more at a higher price than at a lower price, meaning that suppliers supply more when the price is high in order to take advantage of the high price and make more profit. So suppliers supply more at a high price than at a lower price. When the price is reducing, the suppliers also reduce their supply. This is it, and you can equally represent it this way in figure 3. Change in supply. A change in supply caused by change in factors other than price means a shift in the entire curve, entire supply curve, to entirely new curve. A change in supply occurs when a greater or smaller quantity of commodity or service is supplied at a certain price. That is change in supply. A shift of the supply curve to an entirely new curve. That is a shift of the supply curve to an entirely new position, either to the right, which is increase, or to the left, which is decrease. That is, any movement to the right is increase, while a movement or shift of the curve to the left is or signifies a decrease, just as you equally have in fig 4. In the same fig 4, you can draw it like this A. If you want to change it to B, change in increase or decrease. This is increase. If you want it to be decreased, you remove your arrow and point your arrow the other way, because forcing it to face left. Now it's movement to the right showing increase, while movement to the left showing decrease. Let us go to our assignment. Our assignment for today, number 1, define supply. 1B, what is supply schedule? Number 2, identify 2 differences between change in quantity supply and change in supply. Identify 2 differences between change in quantity supply and change in supply. Number 3, with the aid of a graph, state what is meant by increase and decrease in supply. With the aid of a graph, state what is meant by increase and decrease in supply. With this, we have come to the end of lesson today. My name remains Obi Ifeanyi. You can send your assignment to my WhatsApp. My contact number is 080-350-328-31. I repeat, Obi Ifeanyi, 080-350-328-31. Stay home, stay safe, keep learning. COVID-19 is real, and your exam will soon be there around the corner for SS3 students. I wish you well. Thank you very much.